تمام كده شغال. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, everyone. With you today, Mr. Mahmoud Abdullah, and I'll be teaching you novel Great Expectations, Chapter 2. But before I start, I'll do a quick review on Chapter 1. In Chapter 1, you were introduced to a new character called Pep. He's the narrator of the story, and he is the main character. In the beginning of the chapter, he was visiting his dead parents in the graveyard. Um, okay. Like you know, he was an orphan. His parents died when he was a little child, and he lived with his sister, Mrs. Joe, who was 20 years older than him, and and her husband, Mr. Joe Gargery, the village blacksmith. While he was visiting his dead parents, a stranger appeared and jumped on him. This stranger was a convict, escaped prisoner, and he wanted Pep to bring him some food and file. And he threatened Pep that if he didn't bring these things to him, or if he told anyone about him, he would cut his heart out. And he threatened him with another person whom he called a traveler. This young traveler, rose young boys' hearts and ate them. So Pip was so frightened of him. Um, Later, he went to his house, and his sister was waiting for him. And like you were told before, his sister was proud of the fact that she had brought him up by hand. I think with a stick. Um, ماشي. She asked him where he had been, and he told her that he was visiting his dead parents in the churchyard, and she was so annoyed at him, and she threatened him with a stick. But he was in a good relationship with Joe Gargery because they were both in the same position of being scolded by Mrs. Joe. So they became good friends, and Joe protected him whenever he could from her anger. And later, Pep heard the sound of gunfire. He asked Joe what was that. Joe told him that this was a convict had escaped, and they always fire a gun from the prison ship. He wanted to know more about the prison ships and prisoners, but his sister, like you know, was so mad at him and annoyed by his questions. Yet she answered all his questions and told him that there are prison ships on the river, alas, and there are people on the prison ships who are brought into prison ships because they do all kinds of bad things. They steal, murder, and they start their life of crime by asking too many questions. So Pep was afraid because I think this applied to him. He was already asking too many questions. Yes. Later, as he promised the convict, he wanted to bring him the food and the file. So he went into and quietly into the kitchen and stole the brandy, a cheese, bread, and a meat pie. So later, like I said, Pep got into the kitchen, into his sister's kitchen, and stole cheese bread and meat pie and some brandy for the convict, hoping that no one would notice what he had stolen because it was already Christmas and there was a lot of food. And he gave these things, the ones that the convict had asked of him. to the convict, but there was something strange happened because the convict thanked Pip, and yet he told him that he wanted the convict to leave some for the young man, and the convict told him that he didn't want any food, but Pip told him no, he looked rather hungry. And the word looked surprised the convict because looked means that he had already met him. Locked were over there. So yes, the convict told him that he had already heard the sound of gun, and like a madman, he asked him to point to the place where he saw this other convict, and he wanted to meet him and finish with him for some unknown reasons that maybe later you will know about. And Pep left him bending down on his legs and filing away at his iron chain. So let's start with this was a quick review on chapter one, and let's start chapter two, catching a convict. But let me introduce you first to some new characters. Oh, in this chapter, you are introduced to two new characters, and another one called Compasson. They didn't talk a lot about him, but I'll tell you about him later. The first character of the two was Mr. Wopsle. Hold a second. Mr. Wopsle, this is the first character you are introduced to in this chapter. He had a large nose and a shining bald forehead. He was the church clerk, a person who works in a place like a priest. The other character is Mr. Pumblechook. He had a shop in the nearest town and was a fat, middle-aged man with a mouth like fish and staring eyes. He was really Joe's uncle, but it was Mrs. Joe who called him uncle. You don't need to know a lot of the details about their description, but you need to know like Mr. Wopsle had was a church clerk, and Mr. Pumblechook had a small shop in the nearest town and was Mr. Joe's uncle. Okay. Okay, page five. If you have your novel with you, open your novel page five, and you will try to answer this question with me. Why was Pip frightened and lucky on Christmas morning? But before you try to answer this question, let's watch this video together. I muted this video so you'll only watch a moving picture. Let's start. This is an event from chapter 1. The things that Pip stole from his sister. Okay, the answer to this question, Pip was so frightened and lucky on Christmas morning because he was afraid that his sister would discover that he had stolen from her. But luckily, حسن الحظ بقى, she was so busy cleaning the house and roasting the chickens for their Christmas lunch that she didn't notice that he had been out or that any food was missing. So frightened, why? His sister would discover. Lucky, why? Because she was busy cleaning and roasting the chickens. Okay, move to page six with me. Christmas lunch was a painful experience for Pip. Explain. Let's watch this video together first. This is Joe, Pip, Mr. Wopsle, thanking God for the Christmas lunch in front of them. And in the second video, you will notice that Pip was annoyed being around these adults, and you'll know why later. They never left him alone. Look of shame or annoying look on Joe's annoyed look on Joe's face, and you can notice the look in Pip's eyes as well. Okay, so we will need to answer this question. Christmas lunch was a painful experience for Pip. Explain the reason. Pip told you that sitting at the table with these guests, he would have felt uncomfortable even if he hadn't dropped his sister. Why? Mr. Pumblechook's elbow was in his eye. Elbow, a part of your hand. He wasn't allowed to speak, and they gave him the worst pieces of meat. The adults as well never left him in peace. Let's move to an important quotation on this page. Be grateful, boy. Grateful means thankful to those who brought you up by hand, like we said before, by hand with a stick, by hitting him. Who said these words to whom and when? Comment we say who, to whom, when, the occasion. Mr. Bumblechook to Pip when during the Christmas lunch, and you will talk about the rest of the answer of this question. You will need to quote it from the question above. No, you will talk about the Christmas experience. So be grateful, boy, to those who brought you up by hand, Mr. Bumblechook to Pip, and talk about the Christmas lunch and what happened, and that the adults never left him in peace, etc. The second question, why are the young never grateful? Comment. Grateful, like we said before, thankful. Young mean the children. Mr. Wopsle to Mr. Bumblechook, like we said before, during a Christmas lunch when they were annoying Pip with their words and they didn't let Pip have his lunch in peace. They annoyed him, and these words is a proof that they didn't leave him alone or in peace. الكلام ده طبعا بيبين ان هم ما كانوش سايبينه خلاص. مستر بامبل شوك يقول حاجه، مستر ووبسل يرد عليه، وطبعا بيب هنا قاعد متضايق جنب جو مش عارف يعمل اي حاجه خلاص. فالكوتيشنز دي يا جماعه مهمه جدا. Move to the third quotation. He was a trouble to you, madam. هو كان هنا مشكله ليكي. Who said these words to whom? Mr. Wopsle to Mrs. Joe. When during the Christmas lunch, they were annoying Pip with these words, and Mr. Robsel felt sympathy towards Mrs. Joe because he thought that Pip was a trouble to her and caused the a lot of trouble. And of course, Mrs. Joe took these words seriously and started with a list of complaint about Pip's accidents, illnesses, and many bad things that maybe Pip did or didn't do, but she was for sure annoyed with Pip. She started with a list of his illnesses, accidents, and crimes, and everyone looked at Pip with disgust, is except جو. كل كان بيبص هنا لبيب بقرف قوي خلاص، فيما عدا جو طبعا كان ايه، كان يعني حاسس بايه بوجع بيب ومضايقته في القعده اللي هو قاعدها دي. Page 7 يا شباب. How did Joe try to comfort Pip? comfort اللي هو to make him feel at ease، يحس ان هو مرتاح هنا مش متضايق، لان القعده هنا كانت it was difficult sitting around these annoying adults. as everybody except Joe looked at Pip with disgust, Joe added more gravy to the meat. خلاص, swimming on Pip's plate. هنا, hold on a second, accepting people. Again, this question, how did Joe try to comfort Pip? Hold. Okay. As everybody except Joe looked at Pip with disgust, Joe added more gravy to the meat swimming on Pip's plate, and gravy means meat sauce. اللي هو حاجة خاصة باللحمة في الأكل يعني. The next question, why did Pip think that he had murdered Mr. Bumblechook? Let's watch this video first. But with this video here, there are two events that here Mrs. Joe Gargery accept Mr. Bumblechook's request to bring the pie. The events here aren't in order, but you will see, and I'll be with you. Mr. Bumblechook here is annoying Pip with his words. Pip is so afraid here because his sister would find out that he had stolen the meat pie from here. Mr. Bumblechook here began to drink the brandy, and the change of events will happen here. Let's continue watching. Something bad happened to him. Pip ran away. Okay. Okay. Page 7. What happened to Mr. Bumblechook that made Pip think that he had murdered him or that he went crazy? After drinking the brandy glass, Mr. Bumblechook jumped up and began to rush round the room. هنا بعد ما شرب البراندي خلاص مستر بامبلشوك هنا jumped up, نط على طول كده وقام من الكرسي بتاعه, began to rush round the room, بدأ اللي هو يجري حوالين الغرفة in a strange wild dance. Finally, he threw himself into a chair crying, "Medicine!" Then Pip understood that instead of filling up the brandy bottle with water, he had bought Mrs. Joe's strongest and the most unpleasant medicine in by mistake. بالغلط حط ايه الدواء بتاع Mrs. Joe. And in the previous video, like I said, you saw Mrs. Joe agreeing to the words that Mr. Bumblechook had requested to bring the meat boy. And هنا this quotation is you must all try to try Uncle Bumblechook's present to us, a really delicious meat boy. Let's watch this video. His sister went out of the kitchen surprised because she didn't find the pie, and Pip started to run away. At the front of the door, he ran into some soldiers like you see here in this video. Joe is repairing the handcuffs as was requested of him from the officer of charge here. They wanted to know if they had seen convicts. They asked everyone except Pip. That's why Pip looked on the ground. Okay. The quotation here, comment, "I'm here in the king's name and I want the blacksmith who said these words to whom, when, as you can see in the video, soldiers or the officer here, the officer in charge to the attendants or the present guests, and he wanted the blacksmith. What was the business that he wanted the blacksmith for? He wanted him to repair the handcuffs. Okay. Oh, what did the officer in charge want of Joe? Simple, he wanted him to repair the handcuffs. Okay, the second comment on this page, yes to escaped convicts out on the marches. Has anyone here seen them? Like I said before, the officer in charge to all the present guests or to all the attendants, they all shook their heads in disagreement. خلاص, they didn't know, they didn't see anyone, but luckily nobody asked Pip. لحسن حظ بيب ان محدش هنا سأله شفت ولا ما شفتش. هو بيب الوحيد اللي شاف ايه two escaped convicts. The third comment, I hope we don't find those poor men. Comment. Uh, Pip here said these words to Joe, but let's discuss it. Um, Pip here was, I think, it's my personal opinion, that he was afraid that the convict would think that Pip had brought the soldiers to his secret hiding place. This is my opinion. But here let's see Pip to Joe on their way to the marshes with the soldiers. Pip here is sympathetic, متعاطف with the convicts and Joe too. خلاص, because Joe's reply to this to these words was I don't want them to find these poor men as well. هو كمان ما كانش عايزهم ان هم ايه يلاقوا الايه الconvicts. Here, I am holding him for you. Comment page. Hold. This page is. Wait. Page 10. Here, I am holding him for you. Comment. These words were said by Pep's convict. His name is Magwitch, to the officer in charge. When? When they found them, the two convicts, quarreling and fighting against each other, lost on the marsh, and the soldiers managed to pull them apart, اللي هم يفصلوهم عن بعض. تمام، يبقى ده اثناء الايه شجارهم مع بعض وشكلهم مع بعض. The second comment, he tried to murder me. Comment, murder me اللي هو kill me. The other convict, his name is Compassion. In the beginning of the presentation, I told you at the beginning of the presentation, I told you that you will be introduced to a character. This is Compassion اللي هو the second convict. So his name is Compassion, or you can call him the other convict. To whom? To the officer, when after they had found them fighting each other. The other convict اللي هو compassion ده, his face was bleeding, وشه كان بينزف. All his face was full of blood because the other convict gave him a big fight. And he was clearly very frightened. Of whom? Of the other convict اللي هو Magwitch. Murder him? No, that would be too easy. I want him to suffer more. Back on the prison ship, he's lying as he did at our trial. اقتله؟ لا طبعا، ده هيكون سهل جدا ان انا اعمل فيه ده. خلاص قتله بالنسبه لي سهل، انا عايزه يعاني اكتر. خلاص في السفينه. يعني هنا عقاب اللي هو ماجوتش لكومبيسون ده ان هو ايه؟ ان هو يسيبه خلاص مسجون على السفينه، مش اللي هو يقتله. He's lying as he did at our trial. خلاص trial هي محاكمه. Who said these words to whom? Pip. Pip's convict. Hold on. Who said these words to whom? Pip's convict to the officer in charge. When? after being caught by the soldiers fighting the other convict. Last, yeah, you, if you want to talk more about the accent, it's okay. Moving to the next page, page 10. Hold on. How did Pep try to clear his difficult situation of being misunderstood by the convict? Pep made a gesture with his head so as not to be misunderstood by the convict. هو هنا عمل إيماءة، خلاص حركة براسه عشان ما يتفهمش غلط من الايه، من الكونفكت. عمل ايه بيب؟ He shook his head to the convict. Shook his head, moving it to right and left, to the right and left. He shook his head to the convict and to tell him that he wasn't the one who had brought the soldiers to him، عشان يديله ايه اللي هو ان هو مش هو اللي جاب له السولجرز هنا. How loyal was the convict as Pip was loyal to him. ازاي هنا الكونفكت رد وفاء وولاء بيب ليه بالمثل. He repaid Pip's kindness with a kindness on his part. منه بتبقى منه امتى؟ when he was about to be taken to the prison ship he told the officer that، وده اللي هو الكومنت اللي هو هنقوله ممكن تستخدمه في question ده. officer after my escape، بعد هروبي I stole some food from the blacksmith's house: bread, cheese, brandy and a meat boy. I'm sorry I ate your boy blacksmith. comment. خلاص ده كله مرتبط بالاسئله اللي فوق. And another comment: we don't know why you're a convict but we wouldn't want you to die of hunger. ما نعرفش انت ليه convict، خلاص مجرم، بس احنا مش هنعوزك ان انت تموت خلاص من الجوع. تمام. كل الكومنتس دول تقدروا تستخدموهم في نفس الاجابه. جو تو ذا convict when، اهو انا عامل اسهم اهي، معناه انت تقدر تستخدم ده هنا وده تستخدمه فوق. جو تو ذا convict when the convict intentionally accused himself of stealing to protect Pip. هو هنا convict برضو مش غبي، هو هنا ب... بنيته هو اللي قصد بقصد، خلاص اتهم نفسه بالسرقه خلاص عشان يحمي مين؟ يحمي بيب. And enjoy this last video. It will summarize the last events. 30 seconds. Okay, before he left, he wanted to tell the officer that he had stolen food, and later they took him into the prison ship. I hope you enjoyed this session with you, Mr. Mahmoud Abdullah, and good luck, everyone. See you. Bye bye.